Hello and welcome to The Crux. In this episode, we'll be discussing a topic that has caused quite a stir in the Church, Traditionis Custodes and its impact on the Latin Mass. Specifically, we'll be examining the canonical critique of this controversial document and how it poses a threat to the rich theological and cultural heritage of the Latin Mass. How Traditionis Custodes threatens the rich theological and cultural heritage of the Latin Mass, a canonical critique, by The Crux. In the realm of Catholicism, few issues have been as controversial as Traditionis Custodes. This papal document, issued on July 16, 2021, concerns the use of the Latin Mass, also known as the extraordinary form of the Roman Rite. Its contents have been the subject of intense scrutiny, analysis, and debate within the Church, as its provisions have far-reaching implications for how the liturgy is celebrated and the rights of Catholics who prefer the Latin Mass. To fully understand the impact of Traditionis Custodes, guardians of the tradition, it is necessary to delve deeper into its contents and the context in which it was issued. At its core, the document represents a fundamental shift in the Church's approach to Latin Mass. In essence, it seeks to limit and regulate the use of this liturgical form, giving bishops greater control over its celebration in their dioceses. The Latin Mass has a long and complex history within the Catholic Church. Before the reforms of Vatican II in the 1960s, the Latin Mass was the only form of the Roman Rite used in the Church. It was celebrated exclusively in Latin, with the priest facing the altar, and with no active participation of the laity. The reforms of Vatican II sought to modernize the liturgy and make it more accessible to the laity, with the introduction of the ordinary form of the Roman Rite, which is celebrated in the vernacular language and with more participation from the laity. Despite the introduction of the ordinary form, however, many Catholics continue to hold a deep reverence for the Latin Mass and its associated traditions. In response to this demand, Pope Benedict XVI issued a motu proprio in 2007, Summorum Pontificum, which gave wider permission for the celebration of the Latin Mass. This motu proprio allowed any priest to celebrate the Latin Mass without the need for permission from the bishop of the diocese, provided that certain conditions were met. While Summorum Pontificum was hailed by traditionalist Catholics as a victory for their cause, it also raised concerns among more progressive Catholics who saw it as a step back from the reforms of Vatican II. They argued that the Latin Mass was associated with a particular segment of the Church that was resistant to change and opposed to the inclusive spirit of Vatican II. Furthermore, they contended that the unregulated use of the Latin Mass could lead to divisions and conflicts within the Church. It was in this context that Pope Francis issued Traditionis Custodes in 2021. The document emphasizes the primacy of the ordinary form of the Roman Rite and argues that the Latin Mass should not be elevated above it or be used as a means of expressing opposition to the reforms of Vatican II. It also states that bishops should have greater control over the celebration of the Latin Mass in their dioceses and that the use of the Latin Mass should be limited and regulated. The response to Traditionis Custodes has been mixed. Supporters of the document argue that it is necessary to maintain the unity and coherence of the Church's liturgy and to prevent the Latin Mass from becoming a divisive issue. They contend that the Latin Mass can be celebrated in a way that is consistent with the reforms of Vatican II, but that it should not be used as a means of opposing them. Critics of Traditionis Custodes, however, have taken issue with this view. They argue that the Latin Mass is an essential part of the Church's tradition and spirituality and that its unregulated use should be allowed as a matter of religious freedom. They also contend that Traditionis Custodes is a step back from the reforms of Vatican II, and that it unfairly limits the rights of Catholics who prefer the Latin Mass. Furthermore, critics point out that the Latin Mass has been celebrated in the Catholic Church for centuries, and has a rich theological and cultural heritage that cannot be dismissed lightly. It is seen by many as a link to the Church's past, and as a way of connecting with the faith of previous generations. As such, the limitations and regulations set out in Traditionis Custodes are viewed by some as an attack on the Church's heritage and identity. It is also worth noting that the debate over the Latin Mass is not solely a matter of liturgical preference, but is linked to broader theological and cultural issues within the Catholic Church. The use of the Latin Mass is often associated with a more traditionalist, conservative wing of the Church, which emphasizes the continuity of Church tradition and the importance of authority and obedience. This view is opposed by a more progressive, inclusive wing of the Church, which emphasizes the need for adaptation and change in response to the modern world. The debate over Traditionis Custodes therefore reflects a deeper tension within the Catholic Church between tradition and progress, continuity and adaptation, authority and freedom. It is a tension that has been present throughout the history of the Church and is unlikely to be resolved anytime soon. In conclusion, Traditionis Custodes represents a significant development in the Church's approach to the Latin Mass and has far-reaching implications for how the liturgy is celebrated and the rights of Catholics who prefer the Latin Mass. While the document has been praised by some as necessary for maintaining the unity and coherence of the Church's liturgy, it has also been criticized as a step back from the reforms of Vatican II, and as an unfair limitation on the rights of Catholics who prefer the Latin Mass. Ultimately, the debate over Traditionis Custodes reflects deeper tensions within the Catholic Church over tradition and progress, continuity and adaptation, authority and freedom, that will continue to shape the Church's direction in the years to come. As we conclude this episode of The Crux, we invite you to like and subscribe to our channel for more insightful discussions on the most pressing issues facing the Catholic Church today. It's crucial that we continue to engage in these conversations and stay informed about the latest developments in the Church. So, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel to stay updated on our latest episodes. Thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.